Live from the Talking Joe Studios. It's Talking Joe.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey now, you're a rock star. Get the show on, get paid. It's me, the croupier, for the Talking Joe G.I. Joe Comics podcast. If you are new to the show, you can find out all of the details which are on the website, which is talkingjoe.co.uk. Today, we shall be looking at G.I. Joe ARAH issue 291. Released this week, the week of recording, 6th of April 2022. This is the first part of High Stakes and is the return of artist SL Gallant. And joining me, as always, it's a real American card shop. It's Tim Finn. Tim, how are you?
Hello, Mark, and hello, listeners.
So,
wait, did you call me a card shark?
Card shop.
Cod shop? Myself? What words are they?
A card shop is good. A card sharp. Someone who's very good with cards.
Card sharp. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
I was where was I? I think it would have been the West Coast of America as we were driving up from LA to San Francisco, and we stopped in some very small town fast food restaurant for a comfort break and grab some food. And I wanted some water. And I said to the person behind the counter, "Can I have some water?" And they were like, "What? Can I have some water? What? Can I have some water? What? Oh, you want water?" So,
glad
apropos of nothing.
Glad that in 2022, this can still confound and delight.
Mm-hmm. So, where are we? We are talking about G.I. Joe issue 291. Shall we get into it?
Yes.
So, the team are writer Larry Hama, artist SL Gallant, inks Maria Keane, who's on the main book, where we saw her on... she was on, I think, the last issue of Snake Hunt, 275. So it's not her first time as inker on the main book. Colours, Jay Brown. Letters, Neil Utake. Group editor, Tom Waltz. And research specialist, Diana Davis. The sit rep, High Stakes, Part 1. As Cobra remains busy establishing its corrupt casino operations on Cobra Island, the warriors of G.I. Joe are equally busy attempting to covertly infiltrate their archenemy's latest evil scheme.
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
So let's have a look at what is on the front of these old issues.
So cover A is the first part of a new 5-part connecting diptych, triptych, quadtych, quintic. That's
maybe.
It. Drawn by Freddie Williams II and colored by Fariza Come up. Let's try this again. Cover A is the first of a 5-part connecting cover drawn by Freddie Williams II with colors by someone new to G.I. Joe covers, Fariza Kamaputra. And so we see heads in the background, sort of through atmospheric perspective, like they're far away or grayed out, a giant Zartan, a giant Baroness, and then a bunch of Joes in the bottom half of the cover, facing to the right. They're all full body, and then what end up being giant fingers. We're gonna see Serpentor in the middle of this in 2 more months, and or is it Cobra Commander? I don't know.
It's Cobra Commander's hands.
Oh, okay, all right. So they're in the right hand of Cobra Commander, but there's also a lot of dirt or sand. Mm-hmm. And unlike the previous 5 Freddie Williams II covers, the compositions for this one, it doesn't suffer on its own for being 1/5 of a larger composition. But, once again, only 3 of these characters show up in this issue. This cover doesn't have anything to do with anything. And I'm impressed with how Freddie Williams II draws, because he uses an ink wash and I think it's digital because he wrote the DC Comics Guide to Drawing Comics Digitally. That's a book that you can buy. At the same time, because he both applies a gray wash on top of his inks or pencils, and then the book, and then colors are applied, his characters are particularly rendered, and I find all the Joes on this cover looks to me a little bit like someone photocopied it, and what we're seeing is the slightly contrastier sort of second generation copy of it, where I feel like I'm about to lose some of the color fidelity and detail in the Joes. I like the idea for this cover and these 5 covers, but as for cover B is strange and beautiful and interesting. So it's credited to Shannon Gallant.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't look like, it's not signed. I do believe he drew this. At the same time, it doesn't look like what I think of when I think of his art. Although I guess the shapes of the yellow machine gun flashes actually do match his shapes, although they don't have outlines here. So this is supposed to look like a 19-teens, 1920s, 1930s poster. This is supposed to look like a travel poster from the golden age of sail and rail and flight. But it's got a G.I. Joe helicopter on it and a steam locomotive that has a Cobra cow catcher on the front. And it is all colored with one color, I guess 2 colors, the yellow, but it's all black and white and sort of a peach, a sepia peach. So it's really striking. And then the bottom 1/8 of the cover is black and has a graphic on it that says Paris Grosvenj Transcarpathian Express. And so this is a very, I'm inventing a word here, designy cover. This is less drawn than it is. I mean, of course it's drawn, but it's composed, it's constructed. It's very much about shapes and not about line. It's very much about shapes of black ink and geometric shapes. So it's very unusual for that reason. And then also, this may be the only G.I. Joe cover with no humans on it. Right? We've seen a couple covers where it's more about the vehicles than it is about the Joes. There's the cover. It's in the 60s of the Stealth and the Rolling Thunder. And that cover is very much about vehicles and not about Joes. Although it's Ron Wagner, you can see some Joes in it. Very unusual cover for 3 reasons. And then a nice detail that I like is, and I'm guessing this is Neil Yotake. The title of the story, High Stakes, is in a gorgeous Art Deco font. So that speaks to the casino theme and the Roaring Twenties, I guess. I like this cover, and I think this really stands out on a shelf at a comic book store. I don't know if it sells G.I. Joe well, but it certainly is eye-catching because it doesn't look like anything else on the stands this month. Yeah, what do you think about this cover?
I like it. I think it's. I quite like sort of these sort of retro, very designy, sort of illustrative type of approaches, and I like when people try to do something quite different. When I looked at this, my initial reaction was, "Hey, that's not the cover I was expecting to see," because last time they had a next issue blurb, and we saw Cobra Commander and Dr. Mindbender drawn in a very distinctive SL Gallant style, and this isn't that picture. It's something different. And also I thought to myself, it's credited to SL Gallant. He was certainly solicited as doing the cover, but I wouldn't look at that and be able to immediately point to it being his style. And I actually tweeted him and I said, is this definitely your cover? It's not, it's not that it's credited to somebody else by mistake. And he said, yep, was going for a deco travel poster look, as you kind of said. So good to get that clarification. It was him, and that was kind of the intent of his design.
One of the ways that we know he is an excellent artist is that he can pull this off. That he can draw in more than one style. He's got this style. He's got his normal G.I. Joe style. He's got the style that he drew those Pink Panther comics in for American Mythology, a very small publisher.
And I think his day job these days is drawing for the Beano, which is a very sort of cartoony style. It's a British comic.
The full page image that was teased at the end of the previous issue of Cobra Commander and Mindbender in a casino, that appears to be cover B for the next issue. I see that both at the Diamond website and also at a couple online stores. Cover B 292 is those two in the casino. And then cover RI, retailer incentive, for issue 291 is drawn by Jamie Sullivan and colored by Luis Antonio Delgado. And I love the idea of this cover. Firefly creeping away from a space he's not supposed to be. The sign says restricted area, authorized personnel only. And clearly he's just planted an explosive, because we are sort of low. There's some kind of cut in the ground where there's a high ground behind him, sort of a hill or a plateau. And there are three silhouettes running away from a giant satellite dish where there's an explosion going off. And so the story of this cover, I think, is that Firefly has snuck in through this door, gone under the satellite dish, planted a bomb, and we're at the moment that we see him coming out of the doorway. So I love the idea of this cover. I love seeing Firefly. I love seeing Firefly with his traditional version 1 costume without a lot of extra bits, a la the second live action G.I. Joe movie. And I love seeing his gun, his original submachine gun or machine gun from his original action figure. Where this cover doesn't work as well for me is the silhouettes. The silhouettes to me ask a question and don't answer them. So there are these three silhouettes running away from the explosion. And the shapes of them to me look like, not quite like they're barefoot, but like they have long pants that sort of end at their mid-calf. And none of them have pistols or sort of, I think I see helmets, but this may just be haircuts, but none of them have backpacks. So these definitely aren't Joes. These also aren't security guards or soldiers. And so then I start to think, are these like innocent bystanders, or are these, they're also proportionately, they're a little small, they're a little young. These don't look quite like grown-ups. They look more like teenagers. Mm-hmm. So I'm a little confused by the story of this cover, though as a sentence, I really like it as an actual executed drawing. And then in terms of color, there's sort of just two colors on this whole thing. There's the blue-gray of satellite dish, sky, wall, Firefly. And then there's the yellow-orange of the explosion. And I understand from a story perspective that Firefly's camo is supposed to conceal him against walls and floors and hallways, but he does not stick out at all from the object behind him. And if I were coloring this, I would have put a little more warmth in him, a little more cool in the wall behind him, or vice versa. And then lastly, it's not a coloring mistake, but I think it ends up looking like one. If you can imagine Firefly's weapon, the part that goes to the sort of the butt of it, right? It goes back and then it curls. Mm-hmm. So the part here that curls is colored exactly like his costume and not like the lighter gray of the actual weapon in this drawing. And I think that's because it's in shadow, but it ends up looking like that piece is missing.
Yeah.
Also, I wonder if it would be stronger in terms of story if this door behind him were open, because that would cement for me that he has just come out of this doorway. And yes, come out of the doorway, close the door, and then he takes this position as he steps away. But I'm a little uncertain if he really did just come out of this doorway or not, since the door is closed.
Yeah, the doorway looks a bit small as well compared to his size, given that he's sort of resting on his hand on the door frame,
and that he's creeping away. I think if he stood up, he might. Yeah, I think the perspective of this cover, I think it doesn't quite work. I think the door needs to be taller, or he needs to be smaller, because if he stood up. I guess maybe actually because it's a sort of a service doorway for a satellite dish. Maybe the door is actually not a standard height. And I wish covers A and RI had more to do with the issue, but I'll say that every episode.
Yep, fair enough. Pop fact about these two covers, cover A and the retailer incentive cover. Both of them were previously solicited for use on issue 286 a few issues ago. The Freddie Williams linked covers were originally going to be the last set that we saw, and they were displaced by the sort of G.I. Joe movie type covers. And this Jamie Sullivan was originally solicited but not used. So, yeah, interesting that they do finally see use 5 issues later.
Had we sort of guessed that the more Cobra-focused 5-part connecting cover by Freddie Williams was bumped from issues 286 because those issues focused on Joe's?
I don't know the logic.
Did we guess that? Or did I invent that? Did I invent?
You might have done.
Did you and I have a conversation in my mind?
I cannot remember. I cannot remember if this was a thing that we actually talked about as to why there was the switcheroo. But yeah, there we go. On the Freddie Williams cover, what I'll continue to say is that if we don't get a reveal of Serpentor coming back to life in 293, the middle of these 5 covers, which is kind of the grand reveal and what they're all building up towards, then we'll be given a very bad disservice by the covers. I am not imagining that we'll see Serpentor come back. So if he does, and it does link up to actually what is happening on the covers, then
although there is one panel in this issue which might suggest Serpentor is coming back. I don't think he is, and I don't think he needs to. I don't think he should. But there is a little track laid in case the writer decides to do that.
Let's get into the plot breakdown, shall we? And find out what happens inside. The Joe team of Dawn, Throwdown, Stalker, Scarlet and Mongoose are on a rescue mission on the Paris Krogdinsk Transcarpathian Express train where ultra-nationalist fascist paramilitaries called the True Blood Front, led by a man named Wotan, have hijacked the train and taken hostages. That was a long sentence. The Joes debus onto the train from the Tomahawk and have to make their way to the front where the hostages are in the baggage car. They are taken by surprise, outnumbered 10-1. Dawn is knocked out by a flying chair, set in motion by an RPG explosion, and while she's unconscious, she has a flashback to Snake Eyes' memories of Vietnam during the long-range recon patrol evacuation when he was badly wounded and rescued by Storm Shadow. The Joes push forward through the train, shooting and slicing the terrorists as they progress. Dawn has another flashback, this time to the helicopter accident where he was badly burned, saving Scarlet. The Joes battle their way to the baggage car, taking out the remaining terrorists, capturing their leader, and rescuing the hostages. Just in time for Dawn to have a final flashback, remembering Scarlet tucking in Snake Eyes' mask. She breaks down, saying, "I can't take this anymore." Meanwhile, on Cobra Island, Dr. Mindbender shares with Laura 343 more of his lab projects in the back room of the Cobra Casino. He has a DNA regeneration tube, the original brainwave scanner, and a new improved scanner. He has recovered Snake Eyes' memories and is planning to capture him to try once again to try and create a brainwashed Cobra Snake Eyes agent. Dun dun dun. So, what did you think?
I liked this issue. There was a lot going on, and the flashbacks were familiar but also new and had an added resonance. We checked in with a subplot that I have been intrigued by and hungry to get back to. The action and action choreography was great, and the final page and the final panel packed a punch. So, you and I spoke in the previous episode about issue 290 that it felt fast or short. This issue did not. And I haven't thought about the two in comparison. That would take a few minutes of thinking or looking at the two issues together. Not that I can't do that now, but what I mean is I hadn't prepared that line of thought. But this issue, like some previous issues from 5 or 10 issues ago, is both a satisfying part 1, a continuation of many subplots. So in some ways, not a part 1, it's a part 291. And also not quite a self-contained issue, but a satisfying unit on its own that didn't end with, a rote cliffhanger or I thought it was great. I thought this issue worked really well. And now I can get into specifics. But what is your overall response?
I think not too far away from you. I enjoyed it. I did feel like it was quite a quick read. It was a main plot in terms of that train adventure, and then sort of, I guess, made into something slightly more substantial and broken up by those flashbacks. And also the continuation of I guess, the B plot with Dr. Mindbender and the casino, which, very interesting little subplot that has now continued over the course of a few issues. And, interesting to see where that goes, and leaving on an interesting note. So obviously the Dr. Mindbender casino scheme is the thing that has given this arc its name, High Stakes. And obviously Hammer being Hammer, he's not going to play it too straightforward for us. So despite the name of the arc, we're mostly seeing a brand new one and done adventure where once again we're sort of opening up in the middle of the action. An interesting kind of cliffhanger as well, as you say. It's kind of not necessarily a cliffhanger, but more of an emotional cliffhanger. Where, what exactly is Dawn feeling, and how will she and potentially Scarlet resolve it?
So there's an important return in this issue, and I don't mean Mongoose. It's the penciler Shannon Gallant, who did come back for one chapter of Murder by Assassination to assist in some scheduling, and had come back for what I consider the prologue, the emotional prologue to Snake Hunt. Snake Hunt was this 10-part story with every living Joe character making an appearance, but you wonder, what about all the deceased Joe characters? And so I think it was 2 issues before Snake Hunt started. Maybe it was 3. There was an issue which focused on all of the fallen members of this ongoing storyline, and he drew that issue. And, and otherwise we haven't really seen him since his long run ended around 244, 245. And it is wonderful to have him back. His storytelling is not just clear, because that should be the minimum. His storytelling is excellent. And I think in a very G.I. Joe way, readers might not quite pick up on that, because this book is, in terms of the reading experience, I don't mean the story, in terms of sort of how you take in the story, it's sort of as good or better than it sort of always was, always has been, because this book has, for the most part, benefited from talented storytellers. So the day that we're recording this, there is a single day comic book convention in Boston, just a few miles from where I am. And Larry Hama is one of the guests. And I spoke with him last night, and I said, so it looks like Shannon is back for all the way to 300, or at least for this 5-parter. How's that? And he said, it's great, because his storytelling is genius. So, it's not flashy to have an artist who's already drawn about 90 issues come back for the final 5 or 10 as we head to the end towards 300. But man, is this guy reliable, fast, or at least not slow, and excellent in his choreography. So I want to point out something in particular. So there is a great bit of continuity on pages 7 and 8, where we're in the train, and starting with panel 2, there are 3 terrorists, and they are radioing to their boss, Wotan. One of them is holding his machine gun, one has just pulled a pin on a grenade, and one is holding a cell phone and is talking to the boss. And then someone off panel says, I see a grenade, Mongoose. Mongoose says, I'm on it, Stalker. And then in the next panel, a bunch of Mongoose's shots come into the panel. and there's a big grenade sort of in the foreground and an open hand, which is one of these three terrorists dropping the grenade. And then in the background, you see, in the middle ground, you see one of the terrorists holding his machine gun. And then in the background, the one who is standing dropping his phone, right? So this seems like a small thing. If you've got three different guys holding or doing three different things, they should continue to do that or drop those things 2 panels later.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, it doesn't happen in every comic book. And then in the next panel, right, because the grenade's been activated, the next panel we cut to an exterior of the train, and there's a big explosion with a wonderful sound effect by Neil Yotake. Turn the page, now we're on page 8. Top panel, reverse angle, we're back with the Joes. They're on the left looking right. And between Mongoose and Throwdown is some smoke and a big gash in the side of the train. And outside it is white and light blue for the sky. And inside the train, a bunch of sort of floating papers and some sort of debris, and the curtains around the windows are all flapping in the wind. And then in the next panel, right, we're still on page 8, we've now got a reverse angle. We're just outside the train, and Wotan, bad guy leader, is sticking his head out of the doorway and talking into his radio or his cell phone. And he's looking back at the train, and we see the second to last train car on fire. So I'm sure that this is both Hama in his plot tracking this stuff, and also Gallant faithfully and thoughtfully executing it. But if it is not in Hama's plot, Gallant is putting it there and keeping it there. And if you're thinking, well, Tim, of course, if the second to last train car blows up, it should have the hole in it. Or if we see it again 4 panels later, that's the one on fire. And I'm not arguing that an artist would get it wrong and have the wrong train car on fire. But a lot of artists wouldn't take the energy and place the, quote, camera and pose their, quote, actors such that you do see that hole or you do see that fire in the next panel, the next panel. This is a small 2-page, actually it's only a page and a half out of the 2 pages of continuity. And Hama and Gallant set up an idea, they carry it through, and then there's closure. And that happens all the time in good storytelling, in television and cinema and in comics. And I see it a lot of times in Larry Hama G.I. Joe comics, and Gallant always nails it.
Yes. I think so. I think he's taken for granted in because we've had the privilege of having him on the book for such a long run, but also because his art style isn't overly flashy and he makes it look so easy. I think that makes us as readers sometimes think, yeah, this is easy, but clearly it's really not.
Yeah. So there is a comic book convention that is happening in the first. It's okay. I slightly stand corrected. In all of the flashbacks, except for the first page, but I'm okay with that. In all of the flashbacks, the corners of the panels are rounded.
Oh yeah.
And this is an old-fashioned comic book convention that if you were having flashbacks, you round those corners as a visual differentiation between panels set in the present day. And G.I. Joe has done this before. G.I. Joe doesn't always do this. The first time I noticed it was in 1994, December 94, January 95, when I read the Batman Mask of the Phantasm movie adaptation. And I was struck by how clear the flashbacks were in the movie, because the scene slows down and the sort of chorus of background singers has a certain musical chant, and you get the sort of shimmer in sound, or like the music of a harp being played. Like there are cues that say like, okay, we're crossfading to a flashback. And the comics adaptation sort of only had comic book tools. There's no sound in a comic book. And so, okay, well, Mike Parabeck, who drew that gorgeously, could round those panel borders. There could be a caption, a narration box that says, 8 years in the past, or dialogue could suggest it. Like Bruce Wayne might be saying, I remember Andrea Beaumont, ... Or, we've certainly seen this in the those Jim Lee issues of X-Men where we flash back to Wolverine, Sabretooth, and Maverick as Team X, and it's only colored in brown and yellow. You can do something with a color scheme, and so just as a small, not even old-fashioned, traditional comic book visual device, these flashbacks are all have rounded corners.
This flashback is a sequence that we originally saw in Snake Eyes: The Origin, and back in issue 26 of the original run. And when that sequence appeared, back then it was shown with rounded corners.
But something different is happening this time.
Yeah, so last time we saw it as recounted by Stalker, so it's from his point of view, and this time it's very firmly from Snake Eyes' point of view. So it's all consistent. The previous sequence was a lot more silent. It was sort of, Stalker kind of narrating it to his companions, and yeah, so we're getting a lot more exposition and chat, but fundamentally kind of the same sequence of. But we have events.
we have to nail this on the head even harder, because it's not just that it was told from Stalker's point of view and now it's from Snake Eyes' point of view. It's that this is drawn in the first person, not drawn in the third person. We are seeing this out of Snake Eyes' eyeballs. We are seeing what he sees. So in the same way that, you have a video game that's a first-person shooter, this is all drawn actually from Snake Eyes' point of view, not just generally or figuratively or kind of from Snake Eyes' point of view. And then, with some details were added way back in 144, and I'm trying to think if there are 3 flashbacks in this issue. Oh, and then the final one with
if we walk through them, so the LRRP scene, it was originally from 26, and I think we've revisited it a couple of times along the way as well. The helicopter accident, I think, was the same issue the first time we saw it, and then it was expanded into its own story flashback in issue 144, and this is generally pretty consistent with what happened there. And then there's the third flashback, which is Scarlet tucking in Snake Eyes' mask on the Staten Island ferry. And based on what they are wearing, the Scarlet in the sort of the trench coat and Snake Eyes in his sort of uniform with the peaked cap, that makes me think that it's probably after the events of issue 36, All of the Ships at Sea, where they fight some Crimson Guards on the ferry. Snake Eyes has his mask ripped off, and Scarlet, I think, gives him a new one, and perhaps he's that tuck is when she's adjusting it to make it look just right.
And then we have checked back in with this moment on the Staten Island ferry in 286 and in a Larry Hama sketch retailer incentive variant cover.
3 sort of, I guess, core memories of Snake Eyes. My thought on those, just looking at those pages though again, and the original 26, I thought to myself, how delightful would it have been though if those flashback sequences maybe were coloured slightly differently, maybe just a kind of a more retro, flatter palette to put us more in mind of perhaps issue 26, or in that more recent issue with the Scarlet's solo flashback. Again, I think the sequences that were flashbacks, they were coloured slightly differently. So, and that was quite effective. So, but perhaps it would be nice to see something along those lines.
Yeah, I'm all for any change of scene to have a different approach in color for physical reasons. Like moonlight behaves differently than sunlight, or candlelight, or overhead fluorescence, or you're in the pit and everything's lit by computer monitors sort of at 4.5 feet on a table. It could be for emotional reasons. You have a flashback and it's a limited palette, or it's flat colors and not rendered, or it's all just a knockout. It's all one color with no differentiation. Jordi Belair, the colorist who does a lot of great work for Marvel and DC, has colored Batman, is coloring Black Widow right now. Wrote about this in an issue of or Image Plus, that's what it was. Image briefly published a magazine a couple of years ago, which was half catalog and half sort of articles and previews. And the Rick Remender, Wes Craig comic, Deadly Class, which is colored by Lee Larridge. Lee Larridge has always done a great job with limited palettes. Probably best known for coloring Gotham Central, colored a lot of early Vertigo work. But every 3 pages of Deadly Class, the color palette changes as the scenes change. And it's just a great visual differentiation between we're inside, and now we're in this other inside, and now we're outside. Okay, a week ago on social media, a preview of this issue went up. The cover is in the first few pages, and the sort of notice was, we start this issue with a flashback to Vietnam. And I thought, oh, wow, that's so powerful. One of the touchstones of the larger Hama G.I. Joe story. Maybe it'll be a new wrinkle. The scene gets expanded, or, a week later, a year earlier, a month later, different characters. And I read the scene and I thought, oh, I've seen this before. Nothing is being added in terms of story, although the point of view is great. And then these turn out to be flashbacks that Dawn Marino is having in the middle of a mission because she has all of the original Snake Eyes' memories in her brain. Mm-hmm. And that is a really exciting and powerful device, storytelling device. It makes me worry about her and the mission, because if one of the Joes is getting distracted while a bunch of terrorists are shooting at them from 20 feet away in a narrow train car, right? It's like we need everyone available on this mission, particularly the other person with the sword. And then I'm concerned about Dawn Marino, because if she's having a hard time, she might, get hurt, lose consciousness, quit the team, have a breakdown, become a villain. This could go in many directions. And I think at a basic level, this could be an analogy for PTSD, that soldiers experience terrible things and it affects them later. And this is something that G.I. Joe has checked in with a little bit, but, certainly in the 80s and 90s, it's not something that we all talked about. And then on top of it, this is incredibly fertile, and I didn't realize how much I was waiting for this to happen ever since Dawn got the original Snake Eyes' memories. Because it's one thing if she can sort of, with the snap of a finger, fight as well as him, right? That's an interesting device. It is a little bit devicey, like it's a little bit of a Deus Ex Machina, but it's G.I. Joe and there are brainwave scanners. So sure, Serpentor is a clone of 10 people and he's got all their memories. And like, I don't bat an eye at that. But as soon as you say, well, this teenager who was a Cobra, who's no longer a teenager, is going to be a ninja and she's as good as Snake Eyes. Like, wait a minute, that's too much. No, Tim, that's actually no more than Serpentor. But I don't know, that was 86 and it's old news. And, at the end... Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, the sort of the memories and suffering, the traumas, and the sort of like almost the PTSD of memories is one thing, but when it's somebody else's memories and it's just that much more sort of confusing and strange, I think it's just sort of ups the ante, doesn't it? But sort of returning to your point about Dawn as well, that we've not seen her that sort of Snake Eyes part of her personality or the memories for a little while now. It was played on a bit more in her early appearances, and I'm somewhat concerned that they're just forgotten about that aspect, because Snake Eyes' memories being in her head and sort of battling to the surface is an interesting concept. Just her being a badass ninja is far less interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no conflict, or there's no struggle. I always make comparisons to Uncanny XMen because I think it makes for a good comparison, because they're both very long-running comics with one or two writers that are most affiliated with them. And, this was a Marvel book too. But, lots of times in X-Men comics, someone gets someone else's memories, or someone's memories swap bodies. Mm-hmm. Rogue has Carol Danvers' memories. Storm and was it Storm and Emma Frost switched minds or switched bodies back in Uncanny, I don't know, 151 or so. In Uncanny 281, Emma Frost's, I forget, her mind goes to Jean Grey, or one of them is unconscious or something. And
her and Iceman as well at one point. And,
right.
And Psylocke and...
Right. Psylocke and Quanon. But the sort of telepathy of it, you know, in X-Men stories, that stuff plays out for years, and characters are so bedraggled by it. You know, like Ms. Marvel, now Captain Marvel, like shows up for revenge, and she and Rogue have a big fight. You stole my memories. Or, you know, no one trusts Emma Frost. Or, you know, Jean Grey has all of these, you know, she goes mad and almost destroys, I don't know, the planet, the galaxy, the cosmos. So it's really important that we come back to this with Dawn. And as you just said, it makes her much more interesting. The final page and a half of this issue are one of the stronger endings of any G.I. Joe comic I have read, now that I think about it, because this is something that you can only have happen in the latter half of G.I. Joe. After Snake Eyes is gone and his memories are somewhere else, something like this could happen with Dawn. But there's two things happening. She's freaking out because she's having these flashbacks and she can't control them. But also, she sees Scarlet have this tender moment with Throwdown where she fixes his mask. And then in the final two panels, right, Dawn is crying and she says, Scarlet, I can't take this anymore. And this isn't a love triangle. I don't think Dawn is jealous of Sean Collins. Sean Collins he's not very present as a character these days, even though he, you know, looks like Snake Eyes and is a Snake Eyes. You know, it's a crowded ensemble book. And he also doesn't need to sort of say anything or do anything else. So it's not that...
He can't say anything. He's mute.
I mean, you know, but like, you know, he'd like use his hands or he'd like point or he'd, you know, I mean, he does plenty in this issue by demonstrating with his actions. But it's not that I'm worried that Dawn is angry at Sean or sort of loves Scarlet because she has Snake Eyes' love for Scarlet inside her. I don't think it's going to really go in that direction. I think she's just freaking out because there's too much in her head. She can't do her job and she's lost herself. But the tension that it could be this, I don't want to say love triangle, but this three-sided emotional problem, that is something we have not seen in G.I. Joe.
Well, certainly potentially some very confusing feelings for Dawn, you know, that she's just experienced these two very powerful memories as if they were her own, of saving Scarlet, you know, sacrificing herself or Snake Eyes' former self in terms of that helicopter explosion, and then that very tender moment on the ferry and Scarlet saying, I love you just the way you are, and then looking up to see Scarlet. So yeah, potentially, yeah, very confused feelings. Something else that the flashbacks remind me of, and I want to point out this wonderful drawing by Shannon Gallant, drawing this stuff in first person, not easy. As you said, he makes it look easy, but drawing this comic already is hard. Drawing a third of the pages from a first person perspective, that takes some skill. Those first person scenes, right? Not just seeing, but feeling Snake Eyes' injuries, right? Anytime we flash back to that scene, I am fascinated, I'm thrilled, and I'm worried and sad. Oh man, it's that terrible foundational thing in G.I. Joe comics fiction, right? And when that stuff was first revealed in the book, when I was reading it as a kid, I couldn't, like, oh, this guy's gone through so much. Oh, he's such a powerful warrior because he's gone through so much. He's unstoppable. There are some new details here, though, even though we have seen this scene, right? There are a couple new bits of dialogue which are compelling and difficult, right? So on page 5, oh man, that looks pretty bad. Jeebus, part of his skull is showing. That's not gratuitous. That's realistic and unfortunate and haunting. What all this reminds me of, actually,
is the 1987 Paul Verhoeven film RoboCop. And I'll talk for hours about how amazing that film is. But when Alex Murphy is now RoboCop, he has flashbacks to his life with his wife, his kid, and the moments that he's killed. And those are filmed in first person. So the actors are looking at the camera. And similarly, as he's being there's a whole sequence in the movie, you know, it's like 3 minutes where after he's dead, right? They call it, he's dead. And then, you know, just cuts to black. And then you hear like a power up sound effect. And now doctors are looking down at him and looking down at us. And there's, you know, an operating table light above us. And then some business people in suits are looking at him and then at us. And then, you know, and then someone reaches their hand in and like fixes something like, oh, close his eyes, or, you know, take that part off. I'm not saying that this is aping RoboCop. I'm saying a first person point of view visually is a direct way to put the reader, the viewer, in the perspective of the character. And anyway, RoboCop's great. This issue's great.
Very good. I wonder how they, you know, this is part of an arc, and this is sort of eventually going to, you'd think, probably join up with the Cobra Island plot in some way potentially. I wonder if Dawn's troubles might join up with the brainwave scanner once more in the future.
Also, is there something unresolved between her and Cobra, or specifically Cobra Commander or the Baroness, because she left Cobra and she became a Joe, and Cobra Commander has a real mad-on for the original Snake Eyes, who has threatened him more than once, and Cobra Commander and Mindbender are convinced they need to take out the original Snake Eyes. And I wonder if there's room in the final issues for you know, Dawn either acting as the original Snake Eyes, who put a knife to Cobra Commander's neck in issue, was it 98? It was a Mark Bright issue. So it was 96 or 98. Wasn't 97 or 99. So that's Jeff Isherwood or Herb Trimpe. Anyway, or either acting as the original Snake Eyes or acting on her own because she needs, and I think she actually is free of Cobra. She's been a Joe for, 2 years in sort of compressed story time. But, Cobra Commander holds a grudge, and this kid left, and he didn't just leave. It's not like they left and became a, shoe salesman in Maine. It's like, no, left and joined the Joes. Can you remind me, because I couldn't remember while reading this issue. I know that Mindbender says we need to get Snake Eyes and turn him into a Cobra, but also kill him and turn him into a Cobra.
Yeah.
Cobra still does not know that the original Snake Eyes is gone, correct?
Yeah, I believe that is the case. I believe they are unaware.
Okay. And
yeah, so we've got Dr. Mindbender planning to capture Snake Eyes, kill him, brainwash him. So what does he say? He says, I was able to recover all of the memories of Snake Eyes that I thought had been lost. Once we get our hands on Snake Eyes again, I can finish what I started and destroy him while creating a Cobra version of him at the same time. He has to die for this to work? That would be ideal. So maybe destroying him means destroying his memories and replacing them with some sort of Cobra version or Cobra personality or whatever. But wasn't this basically the plot of Snake Hunt, which only happens a few issues ago, that they kidnapped Snake Eyes with the idea of putting him into a brainwave scanner and turning him into a Cobra agent?
Yeah, but they were unsuccessful.
Well, I guess so. If first you don't succeed, try again.
Yeah, I mean, I don't need Mindbender and Cobra Commander to try again, and this is not in my top 3 of subplots to run with in the final 10 issues. But, to Hama, this might be a dangling plot thread that wants to get somehow resolved. I
was just thinking as well, it wasn't that long ago that Mindbender had his kneecaps blown off by Snake Eyes, so I guess it's probably fair for him to hold a grudge.
Yes, good point. Laura 343's dialogue there. He has to die for this to work. It's not just it's the is the only part of the dialogue that tells it, and the art shows the rest of it. Right? She's holding her clipboard close to her torso, close to her chest, in a sign. Her body language says that she regrets this. She's uncomfortable with this. She's looking up at the monitor, seeing footage of, I think, Snake Eyes fighting a red ninja. I think the idea here is that she's seeing footage or memories of Snake Eyes being the best, being deadly. And her eyebrow is up, so she looks uncomfortable, sad, regretful as she's saying this. And that speaks to how much respect she has for him, that she was the one who had to guard him in Snake Hunt. And remember there was that scene where he's starting to escape and she's pointing her gun at him and she's saying, back up, don't head toward that door. And he keeps walking. And this is throwdown, right? Don't make me shoot, or don't you try and escape. It's my job to stop you. And he just keeps sort of stepping forward. And, as soon as Laura 343 was first introduced, it was 10 issues ago, I thought, is she going to become a good guy? Or is she going to have some moral ambiguity about what Cobra does? Because that's interesting. And the sort of sycophants in Cobra are less interesting because it's one note. I mean, Cobra Commander is interesting because he's so evil. Dr. Mindbender is interesting because he's so evil. But beyond that, you want shades of gray.
Because towards the end of Snake Hunt, obviously she was very sympathetic to Snake Eyes. She didn't stop him from escaping, and then Snake Eyes basically saved her. And as a result, she kind of let him escape and kind of turned heel on Cobra and sort of blew up the corridor or whatever to sort of aid that escape. And the assumption would be that, she would leave she would leave Cobra and maybe join the Joes or go off and do her own thing outside of Cobra. But I guess the more interesting development is that she's stayed with Cobra while having these sort of, conflicted feelings still in there.
Yeah.
So we've got Mindbender with all of his kit there and the mysterious DNA tube. Care to speculate?
Well, I mean,
because we're seeing Serpentor come back in 2 issues' time. So,
listeners, that's a joke. He's talking about the cover. Well, no one's going to follow up on this, but I always remind myself that this Dr. Mindbender is a clone. Forced on the book because in, 92, Dr. Mindbender got a new action figure, the purple and yellow one. And this happened during the Transformers crossover, right? We see him getting grown in a tube, kind of like how we saw Serpentor getting grown in a tube in, I think it's 49. Because I always have purple and yellow and like particular color schemes banging around in my head, if Mindbender is looking at a tube and he's talking about regenerating someone, I think, oh, like he was. And then he got that purple and yellow costume. I think two things. One, I don't think Serpentor is coming back because I don't think there's enough time to have him come back and have him do something interesting.
And all of the other things that you kind of want to resolve as well. Right. Yeah.
I also think it's very likely that Hama doesn't know if Serpentor is coming back. I think the DNA thing is more about, we kill Snake Eyes, but we have his memories so we can grow a new person in the DNA regeneration tube and put evil Snake Eyes memories into those. It's funny that, well, before I reflect on this, do you have any speculation?
I don't know for sure. Yeah, like you say, Larry could take it in any direction. Should we play a game of who would you, if someone's going to be brought back from the dead, who would you like to see brought back from the dead?
Oh,
you can sing the jingle, Tim.
G.I. Joe's bringing someone back from the dead. 300 is coming up. It's gonna blow up your head. I don't know. Let's see. I I don't have a good answer for that because, I'm sad that Quick Kick died, but I sort of love him from the cartoon. He didn't make a huge impression in the comic. Anyone in the comic who has died, I think sort of the story earned their death, and to bring them back would either not add much or would cheapen their death. So I think it's more likely that nothing quite gets made of the DNA regeneration tube, but that we have one or two more things happening with the brainwave scanner.
Mm-hmm.
Because very specifically, Mindbender is pointing out 3 related but different pieces of technology in this one panel, and then there are only 10 issues left. Who do you want someone to come back?
I don't know that I do. I think if it's on the Cobra side, I mean, if it's on the G.I. Joe side, I think the only substantial person that they could really bring back would be Snake Eyes. And I guess they're sort of laying some potential breadcrumbs for that in terms of Mindbender having this record of Snake Eyes. Maybe it's a route to having Snake Eyes, the real original Snake Eyes, return. On the Cobra sides, most of the Cobra deaths happened in the freighter, and of those people who died around that era, we've had a few of them come back already. So Billy, Zartan, Dr. Mindbender, Serpentor, Firefly have all come back. So I think we're kind of left with a bit of a B list of the likes of what's he called, the guy who was the Min, the guy who ferried across
the captain.
Captain Min.
He makes it to the cover. Oh, Tyrone. And Tyrone should come back.
And Tyrone.
They make it to the cover of. They make it to the cover of 98.
Yeah. I think the only two that died and stayed dead were Raptor and Crocmaster.
Right.
There
is a new Crocmaster.
Crocmaster died before his time, so
there is a new Crocmaster toy. I do not think the original Snake Eyes is coming back. I think Hama has been repeatedly and clearly stated that in the letters page and in a few other places that the original Snake Eyes is not coming back. And now that I've said that, I reflect upon the sort of logic of what you just said. Like, well, there's some track laid here, and that would be a big thing to do for 300.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's more interesting if he doesn't.
Yeah.
I am operating under the assumption that he is gone, and it is more interesting and more emotional to feel the loss, but also be able to have new stories told about him, either in flashback or through Dawn.
And speaking of insight being revealed through the letters page, sad to see once again no letters page this issue.
Yeah.
Sad.
I noticed in the credits that Megan Brown is not listed as assistant editor. I wonder if she has moved elsewhere within IDW. That Tom Waltz is the only. Usually, for many years, we've had 2 editors listed, and we have just the one.
Yep.
One other small. I don't think this actually plays into how the characters act in this story, but another small element or wrinkle that I felt with Dawn having these memories and then seeing Scarlet at the end and seeing Throwdown is that Dawn is younger than all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And Throwdown is the second youngest of all of them. So this gets sort of truncated, this gets sort of crunched together so that it actually doesn't matter or make a difference, because, Snake Eyes, Storm Shadow, Stalker, Scarlet, they're all about the same age. Some of them were in Vietnam serving together, and their friend, Wade Collins, had a son, Sean Collins. So Throwdown is 10. Again, within the Joes, some of the Joes are going to be, 24, 25. And then some of the Joes are going to be 35, and then Hawk is going to be 55, right? I mean, in 86, when Mainframe came out, I think between his toy package and his some of his dialogue in Arise Serpentor Arise, my brother said, "Oh, he was in Vietnam." And I think that was to me saying, "Oh, he's a little bit older than some of the other Joes." And some of the Joes are E4s, and then some of them are lieutenants and captains. And generally, the higher the rank, the older you are. So yes, there's a range here. But Throwdown and Dawn, there was this time jump between when Dawn got the costume and then the yearbook. And then she sort of joined the team, not provisionally, but normally. So it's like she's not whatever she was as a Cobra youth, in Springfield. She's not 16 or 18. She's not a high school lacrosse player. She's 18 or 20 or 22. And similarly, Throwdown, didn't they say the same thing to him after Sean was injured? They then said, like, well, go off and maybe come join the team. Or then he showed up a few issues later and they said, we're glad you joined the team. So, in the way that like time moves, Spider-Man has been published for 50 years, and there are 50 Spider-Man stories. 50 Christmas stories with Spider-Man in them. But, Peter Parker is 28. Or, they like slightly de-age him for a new number one. He's like, he's not 28, he's 24 roughly. So, we're still talking about the Vietnam War, and these characters have not aged in real time. So there is some slippage and play. So, yes, Dawn and Throwdown get aged up a little faster than everyone else. The other characters don't age up as much. And this isn't like the Devil's Due book where they're all 5 years older than they were when the book hit a mark 5 years ago. It's like The Simpsons where, in one episode, Lisa and Bart observe to each other that things go crazy about once a week, and then they sort of get set back to normal.
Mm-hmm.
But all that said, if Dawn is having a hard time, she is younger than the other Joes, even if she's not a teenager anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Scarlet and Throwdown were probably born about 25 years apart, but somehow now almost the same age.
I'm okay with that. The Joes have drones and tablets now. And when I reread the Marvel issues, they sure didn't. And I don't need some story to explain that. And I also don't need Hama to go out of his way to not have them have cell phones and drones now. Or, if there was a flashback to Vietnam, like in this issue, and someone had a drone, that would feel
weird. Yeah,
that would feel strange. But it's all elastic.
Yeah, that's fine. That's all fine.
I want to point out one thing in the art that didn't work for me on the final panel of page 16. Dawn is lunging up with her sword to take out a bunch of these bad guys before they shoot the hostages. And on the top panel of page 17, the bad guys they're all in the foreground. They're knocked out in sort of a muddy gray, blue, brown, and they're all shooting. And they say, "She's moving too fast. Can't even see her." Brap, brap, brap. And she's whizzing by.
Yep.
And her costume is black with a little bit of red. And this issue is great, but this one part of this one panel, not penciled or inked or colored the way that communicates this idea. She should look like the Flash. She's running so fast that you should see like multiples of her, or she should be sort of transparent and you can sort of colored lighter, you can see through her. And then the final one, if you've drawn 4 of her or 6 of her, like that's more, I don't know, or opaque or inked more solidly. What this panel looks like is that she rolled out a red carpet and like twirled it around in the room. It looks like a solid, opaque, red fabric or wood object. It doesn't look like speed lines.
This was under my I Spy. It was going to be I Spy Plastic Man.
Yeah.
From DC there. Yeah, I'm trying to put my finger on perhaps what comic character or cartoon would kind of move in this way, where it's kind of like a solid block color, sort of zipping zipping around. I feel like there's something that I just can't quite put my finger on, but yeah, it sort of comes across like a bit of a solid object.
But the issue, right? Hard book to draw. Issue is probably a rush job because of schedules. Everything about this issue in terms of art and storytelling works. So that panel, a little bit of a bummer for me. Deal breaker, no way.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that I had on my notes were around, I guess, this A plot and the sort of the train and the terrorists. And the first one was sort of noted before that Larry Hama sometimes that you can see a little bit of influence maybe from what he's seen and read, or maybe you could think, has he watched a certain film or read a certain book, and sort of that's picking up in some of what we're seeing in this particular issue. I wondered to myself, has Larry been watching Snowpiercer lately?
Well, I wonder too. Another question would be like, oh, did Hama read Death on the Orient Express or Murder on the Orient Express 30 years ago?
I don't remember Poirot being quite so handy with ninjas throwing stars and swords.
Or Dr. Zhivago. Did Hama see Dr. Zhivago 30 years ago? Or is he thinking, well, I just did an issue with a boat, and there was an Arctic issue, and we did some tank issues. Oh, a train. Every couple of years I do an aerial issue. Oh, a train.
Could be.
But yes, maybe Snowpiercer is in the ether.
Yeah, it's that sort of starting at the back of the train and sort of working your way forward against the opposition forces. The other thing was about the enemies that they're facing, which forgive me if I have to refer to my notes to get the name. It is the ultra-nationalist fascist paramilitaries, the True Blood Front, led by Wotan. Did you notice Wotan has got a bit of a like a toothbrush moustache as well? And
yes.
the other and the terrorists all sort of being in those sort of matching kind of overalls type uniform with the black mask and the sort of glowing green goggles. Shopping at the same place. Terrorists in the G.I. Joe world do have a knack for matching outfits.
Yeah, I was. This had favorite and front and center G.I. Joe characters like Scarlet and Snake Eyes, and so this didn't feel like a Marvel issue of Special Missions, but in that the Joes are taking out some bad guys who aren't Cobra, it looks and feels a little bit like Marvel Special Missions. And I do think that Cobra is big enough and there are enough individuals in it, Major Blood and Gristle, who could be leading a side mission or something of this Train Europe mission does connect to the larger Cobra story, or Cobra Island and the casino. But also, maybe Hama just needs some bad guys who we can quickly dispatch in this issue so that, it's like, okay, well, the Joes are on a train and there needs to be some fighting and Dawn needs to have these visions. Well, maybe the Joes would take on Cobra or a small sliver of Cobra, but there are always other bad guys and terrorists and villain armies in the world to pick from or make analogs of. Maybe Wotan and his crew do connect in the next few issues. Maybe we never see them again because, well, the train plot was foiled. And in fact, Stalker ties it up in a bow.
Yep,
he says, Mongoose says, and you took their leader alive to stand before an international tribunal. He's due for some unpleasant rendition before he gets his just desserts. Right? So Wotan is knocked out, and I would love if they connected to something, but they don't have to. It's not like Firefly back in the 120s. It's like, oh, it was Firefly all along. Like, Firefly is a ninja? Wait, the ninjas can stand on each other's shoulders and make a scorpion? Maybe this is just like I don't know who. I don't remember who the bad guys are in Special Missions 14 and 15, but maybe it's like them. Or the hostage taker in is it Special Missions 21? What's the cover where Shockwave is crashing through the window?
Yep, I know that one.
Yeah.
Yep. Shall we move to I Spy?
Yeah.
I spy with my little eye.
So segueing nicely to my first I spy 29 or so dead terrorists. This has got a body count, mostly dispatched by throwing star and sword and various other automatic weapons.
I spy Wild Bill and Lift Ticket appearing in one panel.
Yeah. Is Roadblock one panel too as well?
He's in 2 or 3.
All right.
I spy Scarlet not just throwing a throwing star, but taking a throwing star off her glove, which is satisfying because you feel like she should do that much more often. And we have seen her throw throwing stars, and I feel like maybe we've only seen her actually take a throwing star off of her glove maybe once before.
Mm-hmm.
But as a kid, it's like the difference between having any G.I. Joe figure or Cobra figure and throwing a grenade and having the Frag Viper, right? Like as a kid, you sort of looked at Scarlet's glove and you've thought, well, I can't take that off. That's molded on. But, you sort of pretend that she takes that off and throws it on. So it's a little detail I like there.
And I think Scarlet throws a total of 4 throwing stars. Let me just make sure that I'm not making that up. Yeah, and they're in there. So I think it's pages 16 and 17. She throws 2 lots of throwing stars at the enemy to somewhat deadly effect. So the original toy had 2 throwing stars on her arm, on her left arm. So do we think that she's tooled up with 4 throwing stars, or does she, as she progresses through the stars, as she progresses through this train, pick them out of the dead terrorist skulls, reattach them to her wrist, wipe them down, and then reattach them to her wrist before progressing on?
I think she has 4. I see a lot of sword slashing death in this issue. And also, I see a lot of blood, and also
black blood.
It's all black. So the Comics Code Authority was brought into existence in the 50s by a bunch of publishers, so they could put EC, not DC, EC Comics out of business. And for many decades, comics all were submitted. The actual art for each story was submitted to the Comics Code Authority, who would read every story and wag their finger and make suggestions on what to change and what to soften. And there were rules about what you could do and what you couldn't do. How, for example, authority figures like police could not be shown to be corrupt. And by the time that G.I. Joe's published in the 80s, I don't know that art was still submitted. Maybe scripts were submitted, or maybe nothing was submitted, but the publishers were properly sort of cowed and following along and just paying their dues to the Comics Code Authority without actually submitting assets. But it's a self-policing, that is. But early on, they were submitting. And sort of 2 of the well-known rules as of the 80s, which would affect G.I. Joe, are blood can't be red. So if you think of Marvel Comics in the 80s, blood is often brown.
Mm-hmm.
And 2, you can't show exit wounds. And so sometimes people are shot and the bullets just sort of stop within them. They don't burst through the other side. I'm not talking about an explosion of blood coming out the other side. I just mean that yellow streak coming out the other side. And the same goes for being impaled, right? So, if characters are famously impaled in Marvel Comics in the 80s and 90s, you either often the sword or the sai pokes through, but it also pushes their clothing. Like if you took your hand and you put it up your shirt and then you poked your finger, right? You just see a poke, but not your finger. Anyway, this comic, this G.I. Joe comic, is A, not approved by the Comics Code Authority. B, the Comics Code Authority does not exist anymore. C, I think it was around 2010, the final 1 or 2 publishers that were still subscribing to the Comics Code Authority, which I think the final 2 were Archie and DC, but I could be wrong. It was Archie and someone finally stopped subscribing to the Comics Code Authority, and at last the approved by the Comics Code Authority seal disappeared from the last vestiges of comic book covers in the 2010s, I guess. But this still makes me think of G.I. Joe in the 80s at Marvel. Like, oh, that blood's not red.
I've got two asides. One is that on the off-panel podcast with David Harper interviewing John McCree, he went over to New York and while he was out there, he'd always seen the Comics Code on comics and was a little bit fascinated by it, and wanted to find out more about how it all worked and what they did, and wanted to go over and visit them, and called them up, and they were like, no, don't come here. It's a very funny anecdote.
That's great. I would, if I could travel back in time, I would go there, and I would. I think I'd spill coffee on everyone's desk and say, "Stop this madness."
And the other one was that there's an off-panel shot by Throwdown against one of the terrorists on. I guess it's the top right-hand corner of, it's probably page 9. Let me know when you've seen it. He's jumping up in the air.
Oh, wait, sorry, I was taking a note. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
So
yeah,
Throwdown
he's upside down.
Upside down. And there's an amazing piece of sound effects there. Was it Pip should? And he's sort of being shot, his a headshot slightly off panel, which put in mind that glorious issue that was done by what's his name?
Kuber Baal,
where he was using some very inventive ways of having very gory violence just happening just slightly off to the edge of the panel.
I have an I Spy, and this is a nice visual rhyme.
You've got quite a lot of background noise at the moment.
Oh, it's raining like crazy.
Oh wow, okay.
And I can't do anything.
Silence the rain.
You want to just?
That's okay. That's okay.
Charlie Mike. Just wait a minute.
We can keep on going. It's atmospheric. Maybe just come slightly closer to the mic.
Okay. How's this?
Okay. Cozy.
Okay. All right. I have another I Spy. Oh, if you hear background noise, it's raining all of a sudden like crazy, and I'm in a room with 3 windows. This in the comic, this is shown and not called out. On page 9, Throwdown has this particular move where he slashes 3 bad guys, and this one is called out. And then Dawn says, she calls it a triple flying swallow cut. She says, "Oh, nice triple flying swallow cut, Sean." And then on page 17, also on a right side, also a middle panel, also about the same size, she has a similar but not identical move where she takes out 3 bad guys in a long winding S curve slash. And I thought that was both an opportunity to further. I was intrigued that no one said anything about it. Like, now I'm going to do the same triple flying swallow cut. Or, Scarlet could say, "Oh, Throwdown," and because they don't use code names. "Oh, Sean and Dawn are so simpatico because they're both kind of Snake Eyes. They both have done the triple flying swallow cut." Not necessary. She just does something similar, and I noticed it. Yeah,
it creates a big conjoined S of dark blood, and they have the same sound effect as well. Zash, zash, zash. I spy Throwdown using the same sword that Robert Atkins introduced for Snake Eyes in Snake Hunt, which infamously Netho Diaz didn't use every other issue.
Remind me from Atkins's contribution to Snake Hunt. Does this sword have a name or a type?
Ooh, definitely Robert has got a name for it. I don't remember if it was specifically called out in the book. I'd have to go back and look. But
it's not like at the beginning of Snake
distinctive.
Hunt. No one said, "Throwdown. Why that sword is perfect for if you ever want to do a triple flying swallow cut."
I've got the issue here. I can give me one second.
Remind us what's the number? Are you flipping through one of your giant books?
Well, no, I've not bound I've not bound Snake Hunt yet because I want to make sure that my binds are kind of the right spaced out at the right size. So I want to get to the end of it to figure out how many issues to put in each thing. Doesn't look like the sword is named. No, it doesn't look like the sword is named, but they make a point of sort of lingering on it in the art. So yeah, great that SL Gallant makes the point of using that particular design. I wonder, perhaps Diana gave him a nudge to make sure that he'd used it.
You know, I did wonder with this issue. I know we're in the middle of I Spy, but going back to thinking about 300, I wonder if Throwdown might exit the story before or during 300, because might the wrap up of the book, in order to be a little bit of a gut punch, have a character exit the story, and is there some? I think it's interesting. Is there some? I mean, right now there are 2 Spider-Mans. I'm not even counting the rest of the Spider-Verse, but I mean very specifically in the main 616 Marvel Universe. There's Peter and there's Miles. There's 2 Batmans right now. There's a Batman in Gotham. There's a Batman in New York. There's always 2 or 3 Ghost Riders because Blaze and Catch, etc. Right? There's Superman and his son. Right? Right now we're in an era of generations or sort of side, there's about to be 2 Captain Americas again. I wonder if there is some redundancy in having Throwdown and Dawn, and if having one of them exit the story simplifies things and also makes the audience feel things.
You might be onto something there. Speaking of Sean, I noticed that he uses a very specific weapon as well. He used a silenced Heckler & Koch MP5K, and the reason I know what it was without doing too much research was because I held up the comic to my son and I said, James, what's that gun? And he said, oh, that looks like an MP5K. And I was like, you play entirely too many first-person shooter games.
Wow.
So this
the perfect analog of this is in 1986. You would pick up a G.I. Joe comic and look at a weapon in it, and you would say, oh, well, that's obviously a Mac 10 because you had bought entirely too many G.I. Joe figures.
So the MP5 is the ultimate close quarters weapon. It's created for use in confined spaces, is optimally suited for both active engagement of individual targets and for personal defense. Its low weight and compact size offers a decisive advantage. The weapon can be carried concealed on the person without limiting the carrier's freedom of movement. It sounds ideal. And I think it's a clever way of showing that Throwdown is a different character to Snake Eyes, because by having both having a bit more of a signature weapon, that Snake Eyes is so well known for his Uzi that it sort of very quickly is a kind of reminder that, oh yeah, Snake Eyes is not carrying that Uzi that we all know he uses. That's because he's a different character. That is all. I think that's. Oh no! I had one more. I Spy the Cobra kitchen. So the kitchen from Jurassic Park that Billy Penn first introduced in his issue. The Laura and Mindbender walk through the casino, then the kitchen to get to his hidden lab at the back again. In the kitchen, there's a bat with a frying pan, as well as another bat who's carrying a ridiculously massive stack of plates. and there's a little sign in the kitchen which says, if you see something, say nothing. It doesn't concern you.
I laughed out loud when I read that.
Any more I Spies before we move on?
No. No.
Do you have an error detected?
I do. I have 2.
Error detected. Error detected. No prize incoming.
On the inside front cover, 1 inch from the top, in very, very, I think this is 4-point font. On the right side, it says, special thanks to Hasbro's Ed Lane, Taya Rio, and Michael Kelly for their invaluable assistance, period. For their invaluable assistance, period. Also,
they gave a lot of assistance.
Also on page 6, in that one panel where we see Lift Ticket and Wild Bill, and Roadblock shows up for the first time in this issue, he says, but she's back on her feet now. Sounds like Dawn, Scarlet, Sean, Mongoose. And the comma doesn't come after Mongoose. There's a space and then the comma. And the comma butts up against the next word, and. So the space and the comma are transposed.
Oof.
So that's a typo.
You get a reputation for nitpicking with that kind of comment, Tim.
But I really like Neil Utake's lettering, all the sound effects in this issue. So
I was going to say, the other error is that Roadblock doesn't rhyme. She's back on her feet now. Sounds like Dawn, Scarlet, Mongoose, and Stalker outnumbered. Something that rhymes with feet. Sorry. Continue. Have I lost you?
No, I'm still here.
Just
it's not an
disappointed.
error. It's just while I'm speaking of Neil Utake's lettering, I do like his sound effects here. All the guns and sword slashing. I do think that the sword slashing sound effects in black are a little hard to read, particularly when they're sort of in a blood slashy shape font anyway.
Mm-hmm.
They don't stick out the way that a yellow or a blue or a white sound effect would. I know they have light gray or red outlines, but I think they get a little lost in these panels. So,
and there's a bit of that's intentional as well, that they sort of that there is definitely a theme of trying to have the lettering kind of reflect the thing that it's kind of giving an effect to, so that a fire effect looks very much like the fire it's kind of giving noise to. That kind of thing. So I get that it's a kind of a consistency to some degree. I have a kind of error detected, but one that I'll no prize. So in the flashback to the Vietnam era, there's Storm Shadow. He is talking to Snake Eyes, and he talks about. He says, when all of this is over and we're back in the world, you got to come meet my family, Snake Eyes. Not just my folks in Fresno, but the main clan in Japan. Now, back in issue 286, he says, my mum was born and raised in Sacramento, but my dad came over from Japan. He died when I was 10. Now, folks is often, talks about your mum, your dad. But for me, the no prize is, or it's not even a no prize because it's just explainable, that folks is vague enough to just mean family. So when he's saying my folks in Fresno, he's just talking about his family unit back in Fresno. The alternative no prize to that is that Tommy's dad died when he was 10, but then got better. I didn't have a specific hammer time, but I think there's definitely Larry Hammer's fingerprints are very visible to be seen in this issue. I did have a colloquialism.
There used to be a pudding that was over-egged. You know the pudding. You know the pudding. At first it was British, but then it was Commonwealth. You know the pudding. You know the pudding. But now there's a new player in town, a comic book writer of some renown. He's using real world examples and peppering the issues with lots of samples. It's a Larry Hammer colloquialism. He's talking G.I. Joe and all its heroism. Can you guess what it is? Is it something new? Now listen as Larry drops a slice of real life on you.
My colloquialism was Ricky Tick. I think it makes sense in the context of how it's said. So it's Stalker saying that he says, we had contact with reinforced platoon of NVA, Saperstein, Escobardo, KIA, Collins, MIA, and we had to DD Mo, Ricky Tick, so no
Well, DD Mao is get out.
Yep.
So I don't remember exactly what all these mean, but these were all used in Marvel's The Nam, and every issue on the letters page would have a glossary so that the comic wasn't interrupted by asterisks and footnotes. So the colloquialisms that all the characters used, like LZ, Landing Zone, Charlie, Chuck, right, Arvin, Buku, Boom Boom. So I read this word balloon and I said, I understand what this means. I don't know exactly what each of those means anymore, but when I was reading the Nam, I did.
NVA, that's North Vietnamese Army. KIA is killed in action. MIA is missing in action. And it's sort of interesting as well that they're sort of calling out that they do believe Saperstein, Escobardo killed in action, and Collins was only missing in action. That they a little bit of doubt here, even then, that that as to be sure that he was killed or not. They obviously, when they go back to the memorial later on, they do assume that they expect to see his name there and don't. So Ricky Tick, derived from the story in the Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling. The story features a mongoose named Ricky Ticky who exhibited great speed, and to do something Ricky Tick is to do it very quickly. So DD Mo, Ricky Tick means get out of there quickly.
Quote of the week, 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 quote of the week.
Favourite line of dialogue? You gave mine away already.
You gave mine away already.
Oh no, mine was Jeebus. Part of his skull is showing.
Oh jeez. I thought you were going to guess Wild Bill saying, somehow I still feel sorry for the terrorists.
Oh.
I thought you would do that. Mine was the sign, the tiny sign in the kitchen. If you see something, which I think is an art addition and not in the plot, not in the script.
Yeah, that would be my guess. Yeah. So I think that is it pretty much wrapped up, apart from our Yo Joage score.
Yo, Cola, not grape soda.
Yo, Cola, it's the time to give comics the rank. They poo are fine. 0 to 10, that's the score. Had enough or hungry for more? The Joes can open their fizzy pop, but you know us, we can't stop. It's Yo Joage time.
We're ready for Yo Joage with a brand new jingle, which was was used for the first time last episode. I'll go in first, so I'm not biased by what you have to say. I will go in with, I think, 7.5. Very solid, one and done adventure on the train with some ongoing mystery about Dawn and her flashbacks and what will happen with that. And also some small progression of the Cobra Casino storyline, which I think we will see in some more detail next issue if the cover is anything to go by. So very much looking forward to that. Very solid. Happy with that. 7.5.
8 for all the reasons that I have already said, particularly from my introduction, that the flashbacks they're powerful when we connect back to that, but they have this added resonance because they're first person and because Dawn is experiencing them. The train stuff is great. The check-in with Cobra is great. The ending is great. Final page and a half.
Very good. Okie dokie. So we don't have anything in from listeners this week, but if you do want to leave us a message, you can do so now. So go to talkingjoe.co.uk, which is the website. Head down to Contact Us, and there is a little box there where you can click on it and you can record a message. So if you've got a comment for us or about the issue that we just discussed, or even a G.I. Joe Origins movie trailer or anything else, then you can do it there, and we might play it out in a future episode. And while you're there on the website, talkingjoe.co.uk, that has got the links to all of the various things like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all of the YouTube videos, the podcasts, and also a link to our Patreon where you can back the show and contribute towards some of the old running costs, just like Richard, Sam, Jay, Bill, Christopher, and Justin do, and are rewarded with early access to episodes as well as some exclusive content. Tim, where can people find you?
My comic book store is Hub Comics in Somerville, Massachusetts, hubcomics.com, and weekly video updates on our YouTube page, youtube.com/hubcomics. And my blog, my G.I. Joe blog, is a realamericanbook.com.
Very good. Next time you can find us, we will be talking about the very latest issue of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, which will be issue 292, High Stakes, Part 2. More SL Gallant, more Cobra Casinos, all very exciting. And hopefully we're going to be seeing quite a lot of regular, frequent releases as we have that drum beat to get us to issue 300 by the end of the year. We also are continuing our look back at the Devil's Due era. So we're right bang in the middle of the Brandon Jerwa years. We also will have various other special episodes like this upcoming G.I. Joe issue 21 cover version, the 40th anniversary issue. That will be I'm looking forward to seeing how that all turns out. And we'll also hopefully be talking before too very long to the guys behind the Total Action Force Kickstarter project about how that's all going. So lots to look forward to. But for now, I think that is us done. But remember,
Nobody Beats Talking Joe, an international podcast!
with a guy over sitting in the dark in England and another guy whose day is still ahead of him over in the States. Laters.
Nice talking to you. I'm going to hop off.
DD Mal Rick Tick. Excellent.
Yeah.